Hey there, and welcome to episode number 152 of the Church Collective podcast. Here I am again in my backyard because that's just the reality of what's going on right now. In this episode, myself and Chris had the opportunity to talk to Cody Carnes, and my goodness, was it fantastic. It's really neat to kind of hear how different worship leaders are dealing with just the current climate and just everything that's going on in their life. We heard more about the blessing. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the story. It was really neat that there's a video of them actually riding it that's on. We talk a little bit about that. We talk about how to really just dig into the Lord and really utilize the time that we have to chase after God. And I think you're going to have a wonderful time with this. Little note too, if you're not in our Facebook group, go look up the Church Collective community on Facebook. We'd love to connect with you there. We have some guitar presets coming up on the website. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming, and we would just love to connect with you. So make sure to find us on all those social channels, and we can't wait to see you over there. Here we go with our interview with Cody. So I guess why don't you just tell us about the new album came out a little bit ago, and then we'll keep moving from there.
Yeah, man. So so excited about this album. I'm so proud of it. And I did this album a little bit unconventionally in the sense that I started releasing songs before I even knew what songs would go on the album or before the whole thing was written or anything. Just kind of started with a song called Nothing Else that I wrote. And first time I led it was at our church conference here, the Belonging Conference back in 2018. And man, this was such a crazy moment in the presence of God. And so I really felt this unction then to just release it soon, and didn't have any other songs written. Just, I want to release this song, And so that kind of started this whole process of just writing a song I really felt I loved and connected to and felt like would connect with people, and just putting it out, And so this album that just came out is really just a collection of a lot of those moments, and a lot of new songs too. But man, it's just been an amazing year, just kind of seeing just song by song, just different songs connecting with the church. And, I really just felt like in this album, I really wanted to write songs out of encounters with God. And there's a mentor of mine, was speaking to a group of songwriters one time, and he said, write songs out of encounters with God, because when you do, it's like the encounter gets locked up in that song. And each time it's led, and each time it's heard, and each time it's sung, it's like that same encounter gets opened up to people. And it's crazy because I watch people, whether it's live, whether it's on social media, which stories that I hear, I watch people tell me the encounters that they're having, or I see them having it live, and it feels exactly like what I was encountering with God, like with Nothing Else. I had this massive moment where I was just repenting to God of just putting all of these desires and these wants and, what I felt like these needs and these things I was praying to happen, and I was frustrated because they weren't happening the way I thought they should. And, all this kind of things. I realized that my heart had become so focused on that I completely lost just the value of just relationship with God and how incredibly valuable that is. And that's the source of peace, and that's the source of joy, not all the stuff, Yeah. And I wrote that song just out of that moment of repentance, and really got set free writing that song. And it's been crazy to see all the stories that have come out of people having the exact same encounter with that song, or during that song with God, And so I love that. And I really just tried to do that on every song. Run to the Father it was written out of a moment where I was just, I was really having a hard time in my relationship with my dad, and just writing about the love of God as a father, and all the voids that I've seen God over the course of my life as a father. I've seen the voids that he's filled, and the wisdom that I have that I shouldn't, and the things that he speaks to me. And I'll get off stage sometimes and I'll just hear, "I'm so proud of you. You did, that was amazing." Stuff that just a good father does, seeing him do that. And so that song is just out of personal revelation for me. Yeah. So anyway, every song, and I can look at every song and I remember the moment I had with God during writing that song, and so really that's what it is. It's just a collection of those encounters, a collection of those moments. And every song, I feel like every song is super congregational, and something that I really felt was important for me to do on this album was to do that. And so, it's been super fun so far, just watching it go far and wide.
What's your songwriting process like? Are you like a sit in a room with an acoustic guitar? Are you a co-write guy? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I usually will. And every song is different. Sometimes it's me in the studio. Like I love writing with like headphones and keys and like a good mic and verb, like the whole vibe. Like that's probably my favorite kind of way to write if I'm doing it by myself. But a lot of times, I mean, a lot of these songs started like in a room with other people, so nothing else. I had the chorus melody in that vibe. I was at the studio writing the chorus melody in my house, but that's all I had. I didn't have any lyrics. I didn't even know what the song was going to be about. And took that into a write with two other people, and we ended up writing nothing else. And Run to the Father, just none of us had the idea before we came in. It literally just kind of unfolded in the room. So a lot of the songs come about that way. I love collaborating with people. I think that that's an amazing thing to do, and songs always get better when you do that. I feel like at least in my experience, songs have always gotten better when you add other people's like perspective. And there's so many different facets to God, especially if you're writing songs about God and to God and songs for the church. There's so many different facets of God that people bring in these different perspectives, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And so it's fun to have collaboration in that. And but I've written songs in 3 hours, and I've written songs in like 3 months, and just a lot of songs kind of get started in a room, and then as everybody goes away, you kind of finish it over text message now. And Christ Be Magnified was kind of that way. I started it in a room with Corey Asbury. We wrote the bridge, and then we only had a couple hours, so that's all we could do for that day. And so we kind of took the bridge and left, and felt like it was really strong, and ended up pulling our friend Ethan Holson, and he kind of brought the chorus after we sent him the bridge. He's like, I have this chorus idea, and it was amazing. And then the three of us over text message finished the verses together, just shooting ideas and voice memos and lyrics, and we finished the song that way. So it's fun what you can do with technology, and that's what we're seeing right now with this whole quarantine thing. Like, it's amazing how you can exchange over technology. And I don't think I'm ever going to leave my house again now. I'm just going to stay home in my sweats and,
Right.
I don't think I've realized like I don't have to go anywhere. So, yeah, it's different every time, man. I've just learned to never squash any kind of idea or anything. Just let a song be written the way it kind of wants to be written, and kind of just watch for it and watch for what God's saying, more than like trying to like bring all these rules and regulations or all these things on it. Like, be more like open-eyed, open-minded to just how a song might fall into place, and look for it instead of trying to like force it. Yeah. So
Are you testing it on congregations and then tweaking, or are you kind of tweaking and then kind of debuting the finished product?
yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I definitely try to tweak it. I definitely don't want to like lead a song that I feel like is unfinished in a distracting way. You know what I mean? Like, if I feel like it's not gonna, ultimately when I lead worship, my goal in that moment is to just serve the people in that moment. So I'd never want to like do something that would hinder that. But at the same time, if I feel like a song is like strong, and I feel like if I write a song that I love and I feel like it's strong, I can't wait to like show it to people. So it really comes from that aspect of like, yeah, I mean, I'm introducing songs a lot in church. I did a lot of songs on tour this last year that weren't out, because I like when I did the Elevation tour last March, nothing else was out. So I led that song, but I had just written Run to the Father. We were actually still writing the bridge. We were kind of still tweaking it. But I was doing that tour, and I was like, man, if I have this song in my back pocket, I'm not just going to like let it sit over on the sidelines. Like, this is a song that could really help people, really connect with people. And so I just threw it on the tour. Nobody had ever heard it. It wasn't out. You couldn't find it for like, I don't think I released it for like 5 months. So it was kind of mean to like introduce it and be like, all right, you got to wait for it. But man, I love doing that. And that does help a ton when you introduce a song to your church or to a congregation of people, and it tells you a lot about it. And I've done that before, where a certain section maybe didn't hit the way I wanted it to, and I've really gone back and asked the Lord, like, do I tweak this? Do I not? And a lot of times, like, yeah, like, make these little shifts, make these little changes, and it helps a ton.
Talk a little bit. I mean, obviously, life is totally different for us right now. What's God doing in and through you? Obviously, you're able to collaborate with technology. That's really cool. But like, you got any advice for as we roll this episode out? I'm sure people are maybe twiddling their thumbs and just kind of stuck, not knowing what to do. Any encouragement or advice?
Yeah, I mean, dude, this is a great time. At least for me, I've got kids and we're touring all the time, and like we're really never at home that much. And so for me personally, like this is a time where like I have so much extra time on my hands in that sense. And I'm trying to be as intentional as I can with it. I'm trying to really like be diligent with spending time with God, reading the word more, like I'm actually having time to like go through like the deep kind of tons of chapters a day type study that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And yeah, just trying to like be creative. Like I find myself in the home studio more now than I was. And I'm just kind of naturally like creating stuff because I just like sat down and did it, And, I think as far as what God's doing in this time, man, I always love how God can just use anything to bring about some kind of like really great fruit in our lives. And I think this situation is no different. Like what's crazy is we see the church coming back to the home, everybody's having church in their home. And I think I love, like, I know I love that. And I think that God is like intentionally doing something in that to like bring these moments with God back to the home, because I know for me and I think for a lot of people, we've become so dependent on like the big gathering, and we've become so dependent on, not that those big gatherings are bad at all. There is a definitely an intention for them, and they need to happen. But they also need to be, I think, an overflow out of what's happening in the home, like how you're meeting with God in your home. And then when you get together in a big group of people, it's almost like an overflow, a celebration, an extension of what's happening here. And I think God's like pushing a reset button on that right now. And where you really you're forced to go back to that personal relationship with God in your home, And if you've lost that, man, lean into that. Like God wants to do something special with that. And I've seen from a creative perspective, I've seen my creativity like grow tenfold out of really just being intentional to meet with God one-on-one on my own, And that sounds so funny to say because it's so basic Christianity, but there's so many of us that like we don't do that. And we depend on somebody else or we depend on just going to church or going to conferences or whatever, and we're not having it for ourselves. But creatively right now, you will get the best ideas, you will get the best things that come out of you if you're really just being intentional, just to use this time, like spend time with God, like read more than you have, or worship more than maybe you have at home, or just do some of those things, and then like write down all the ideas, like the flood of things that you get, like write those songs and write those things. And but I think that we're going to come out of this, like I hope and pray that the church doesn't go back to the way that we were before this. I think we're going to come out of this and we're all going to be different. We're all going to value being together again, which I think is so important, and so special. Like I think about the first time that we're back in church, like what that's going to feel like. And the first time that like we're back on tour and we're playing like this big room, and that used to kind of, for me, feel like it started to kind of feel like almost like a mural when I would look out at it. Honestly, I'd seen it so much, and it starts to kind of feel the same, that it was hard to like not to fight that feeling. Now it's just going to be like this wonder and amazement that we get to do it. I don't know. I just think it's going to be special that we don't take certain things for granted that maybe we did after we come out of this season.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you have any encouragement for like the worship leader in the smaller church? Like any advice for somebody, a church of a couple hundred people? They probably didn't stream before this. They don't have a whole lot of access to that. Like any advice for what they could do to just begin to help engage their church? And I mean, you spoke to what they should be doing at home spiritually and all that. And that's fantastic, guys. Listening to this, please do that. It's so important. But how can they kind of be a lifeline and an engagement for their church in a situation where they might not have access to everything
Yeah.
that they see the big churches have.
You know what I think is beautiful about this is that something I feel like God is also doing is he's kind of stripping off this perfection polish sheen off of what we do, you know?
That's great. Yeah.
And I think that excellence is so important. But excellence is really more a posture of the heart than it is like an outside representation. Like, I think that's the fine line between excellence and perfection is like, my heart is to do everything I can do to the best of my ability. But I think sometimes in church, we hold this like perfectionism thing up to God, like thinking that we're doing something diligent by doing that. And God's not asking for that. I think God is way more delighted in the raw, a little bit unpolished, like, you know, just expression of worship. And, you know, I was a church planner for a few years, helped start a church. I remember having 20 people, and I went from a church of like 30,000 people, you know, leading rooms of 4,000 and all the polish and all the sheen and all the moving parts that were so dialed, you know, which in a lot of ways was great. But I remember going to that room of 20 people, and I remember feeling the pressure of like having to have what I had in the other place in this room. And I remember trying to like, it was almost like kind of like David putting on Saul's armor, where he's like forced to put on Saul's armor. And then when he goes out to fight Goliath and it's like too heavy and too big, like, he doesn't fit. And he's like, no, I'm just going to take all this off and I'm going to go just do what I do. And it was simple. It was like throwing a rock and killing Goliath, you know? And I think about that for like a small church. Like, I think this is actually taking the pressure off of everyone to go, like, if you have all the stuff, that's amazing, and you should utilize it to the best that you can for the glory of God. But if you don't have all the stuff, it doesn't mean you're less than. It actually means you might just you might have even more raw and authentic encounter with God because you don't have all the stuff in the way. But don't feel the pressure to have all that stuff, because I'm seeing people meet with God over Instagram Live right now, you know, and like, if you've got, I mean, it's easy to get an Instagram account. If you don't, which I'm sure you probably already do if you're a church, sure. get a Facebook account, get a YouTube account, something like, go sign up and just put an iPhone up there and just lead worship with an acoustic guitar. Like, dude, that is what everybody is doing. And you're seeing every person that had all the production, all the stuff, they're now having to like kind of do that for the most part. You know, there's some churches that are still able to do their thing, and that's beautiful and amazing, and I love that they're able to do that. But for the most part, like, man, me and Carrie are just in our studio, or we're in our couch just, you know, leading worship over FaceTime, you know. I think engage your church that way. And honestly, like, I remember learning in that church plant season, don't try to do something that you're not in the place in your church to do. Like recognize where you are in the journey. When I was with 20 people, it's like I needed to just not feel the pressure to have a full band of musicians and all this stuff, because I had 20 people in my church and none of them played music. I'm like, how am I supposed to, you know, like, if I was super content back then to just sit with an acoustic guitar in a living room and lead worship, we're going to have way better encounters with God because we're just focused on God at that point. We're not focused on all this pressure and all these things, you know, like that. And let as you grow, let your production grow, and let the like pressure that you feel just off, you know. You don't have to have all that stuff to have these deep encounters with God. You really don't. And I think God is like proving that point right now through us and through the church. Is like, everybody's cool with like the unpolished, untuned video on Instagram Live. Like, you know, before some people would never let their vocal go out untuned and unpolished. It's like, who cares, you know? And you're watching it affect people, and you're honestly watching, I think, the reach of people grow. Like, the reach of these songs going to people is growing because the people releasing them aren't as like afraid, and they're not holding back, and they're not like, you know, it's just like, let's just throw all this stuff out, you know. And I talked to a buddy at Passion City Church the other day, and he was like, we had 200,000 people stream church online with us this weekend. Like, we could have never fathomed like having that many people with us at church if we were meeting in our building and that was our focus. And I don't know, it's just like so crazy to think about when we really just engage each other in a raw and authentic way and strip down. And, you know, I don't know, it's just, I think there's something to it. And I think it's a beautiful thing, man. So work with what you got. That's the moral. Work with what you got and be great and proud of it. And, you know, you're having encounters with God just the same as anybody else's and whatever their church looks like.
Yeah, that's great.
You're talking about journey. What does your personal journey look like? Like, how did you grow up? How did you get into ministry? How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in church. I grew up in a small West Texas town. If you've seen the TV show Friday Night Lights, like that's exactly where I grew up. Where I was from is based on, like, that's what that show is based on. And so small town, like First Baptist Church, that's where I grew up. Started leading worship in my youth group when I was 14. You know, and so really fell in love with like leading worship and presence of God, like leading people to God and through music and that whole season of my life. And I'm a musician's kid, so I grew up playing music. Like I grew up learning all like different instruments and all kinds of stuff. I was just like thrown into the deep end on that side of things. And so, I graduated high school and then moved to Dallas and became a part of Gateway Church there. And started serving on the team, you know, playing different instruments and leading worship some too. And, you know, and then around like 2 years after being there is when I met Carrie, and Carrie invited me to be in her band. And that's really when I started. And at the same time, I started like writing songs. And so I was leading worship with her, and I was leading worship at church, and I was writing songs. And I kind of just started, you know, noticing that I would write a song and I would lead it and people would respond. It was like, whoa, like this mind-blowing thing, you know? And so that just kind of drove me to just keep leaning into what God was doing in my life. And I traveled with her for about a year, full-time on the road. And then I got hired to lead that church plant in Phoenix. So I moved from Dallas to Phoenix, and I was a 22-year-old young kid, and went out there having no idea what I was doing and had to just like figure it all out, which was awesome. And so led that church for 3 years, the first years that it started. And during that time is like, long story short, when Carrie and I started dating, got married, and I was there for like 10 months after we got married. And then we felt God calling us to move to Nashville, and found out we were pregnant with our son. And so we moved to Nashville, and I've just been kind of rocking and rolling here ever since then, you know? So yeah, I mean, I grew up like small town, super conservative Baptist church. You know, I've had church planning days. I've had all kinds of different parts of the journey, and all along the way, I mean, still to this day, I've just seen the value of like serving your church, and serving where God has you right now is the best thing that you could do. And it's amazing to dream, and it's amazing to look forward, and you should, because God gives us those things and gives us visions and gives us dreams to look forward to. But your dreams should never cause you to neglect where he has you right now. And if you're faithful where you are right now, then doors will just open as God wants them to. And any door that you force open, you have to force to keep open, and that's exhausting, you know. And I don't feel like I've ever, and I don't really ever say this because it sounds like kind of arrogant. I don't mean it that way, but I don't feel like I've ever had to force a door open for any opportunity that I've gotten. Like I've wanted to at times, I've been tempted to, but going off of wisdom of other people that have told me this before, like I just kind of would wait on God's timing, and it was always way slower than I wanted it to be. But what I realized looking back at those seasons is the time that I thought it was slow was a time when God was actually preparing me for something, and it was like working on my root system that I couldn't really see. And now as the tree grew taller and as the fruit, you know, grew out on the branches more on the outside where you could physically see it, I realized that my root system had to be a certain way, a certain depth to be able to hold it, you know? And so don't neglect those quiet seasons, those waiting seasons, those whatever those look like. Just serve where he has you right now. You know, when I was with those 20 people at church plant, starting at church plant, I put my whole heart into it. Like, didn't know how long I would be there. Didn't know if the church would ever even grow. Had no idea, you know, but I put my whole heart into it. And I've really seen God just like bless that each time. And you know, the place where I've planted seeds, you know, you reap harvest. And I planted a lot of seeds in that season in the church plant. And God called me to move right when the church started like exploding and growing. right when the worship culture, when finally people understood 3 years in how to actually worship God, you know, I had just started seeing some fruit and God told me to leave, and I was kind of heartbroken. And what's amazing is I've seen the fruit of the seeds that I planted in that season. I've seen the fruit reaped in this season. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to give your whole heart to something, and you're doing it as unto God, and be faithful where he has you, and you just trust him with the rest. You'll know when he opens a door, and you'll feel the wind at your back to go through it. And just live life that way. And it's a fun, crazy journey.
What kind of musical training did you have? Did you teach yourself guitar, or did you take lessons?
Yeah, so I started out, like I said, my dad was a professional musician for like 25 years. And so I started out like, he set me on a drum kit when I was super young. And that was my first instrument. And that was really like my main instrument from when I was a young kid all the way through high school. That's what I thought I would, kind of had an idea that's what I would play like for the rest of my life, be my main thing. And but I took piano lessons at like age 6 to age 12, learned all my theory that way. My dad and kind of taught me guitar after that. And I kind of taught myself some, just knowing all the piano theory and stuff like that. I kind of figured it out, learned how to play guitar. And then I picked up bass like in high school because I was in like all these like post-hardcore bands. And I was the drummer mainly in some of those, when Tooth and Nail was like a massive thing, you know. But there was a scenario one time when I was a junior in high school, and they were like, "Hey, we're starting this other band, but we need a bass player. We have a drummer. We need a bass player." And I was like, "Okay, I'll play bass." And I like fell in love with bass all of a sudden, you know. And so just kind of always have been in music, like studied it in school. I was in drumline and drum captain and all that kind of stuff, just constantly studying music and ton of kind of self-taught kind of stuff. And I didn't go to college, so I didn't have any kind of like collegiate training, but I just kind of dove into just, you know, constantly just leading worship and practicing and learning stuff, and, you know, kind of taught myself anything I do know past that, just kind of along the way. But
So you're a marching band?
yeah, I was in marching band.
That's cool.
Yeah, I played tenors, like the
Oh,
five.
really? Yeah.
The five toms kind of thing on drumline. Yeah.
Yeah, I was drum major. It's
Nice.
funny when you find out how many current worship leaders or musicians like kind of were in marching band.
Yeah, man. I loved those days, man. That was really, really fun times for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a question that fell out on the marching band thing. You keep going, Chris.
Yeah. Back up. You said, man, you piqued my interest when you said Tooth and Nail and the post-hardcore. Like, what kind of bands did you like back then?
Oh, dude, Under Oath, Project, Emery, Amberlin. Like, I was into anything that Tooth and Nail was putting out. I was super, super into. That was like, I never got to go to Cornerstone. I was so mad when it shut down, because that was like, that when I was in high school, it was like at its peak, and that's when the whole thing was happening. But yeah, dude, I went to all those shows, loved all that stuff. It was so fun.
What kind of secular influences do you have? Like, what kind of creeps into your arranging and your music?
Yeah, man. I love so much music and so many bands. Like, I'm a massive Butte Math fan. I'm a big Chris Martin, Coldplay fan. Like, I love Ryan Tedder as a producer and writer, and everything he does in Wonder Public. Like, love everything that he puts out. Bon Iver, love it so much. Need to Breathe. I definitely have these like strains of like, I love super soulful stuff. So any like Alan Stone, like anybody with like a ton of soul, like I have this like special place in my heart for it. And any kind of like really soulful kind of vocal thing, like I love. And then I also love just like the super techie creative stuff, like the Butte Math stuff, but then like the just straight up rock and roll, like crazy party vibes. And I feel like a little bit of that post-hardcore like thing kind of creeps into my music sometimes. Like, there's times when we'll just, especially live, we'll have these like big like thrashing, like high energy kind of things, And like we always kind of joke because me and the guy who plays drums for us, we both grew up in that. And we're like, we're letting a little bit of that creep in just every now and again to like worship environment, you know? So yeah, it's kind of this like crazy melting pot of all these kind of different like, you know, influences coming together. And I still haven't really gotten to like, I'm hoping that even when this album, as it continues to do its thing, that I can do like my first like headlining tour at some point. And I really haven't even got to like fully express kind of all the different elements of all those kind of genres coming together, you know. And I have like all these crazy ideas to make it super high energy and super like techie at points, and then like super broken down and like intimate, soulful, and you know. So we'll see what happens.
What does your home studio look like? Are you super into gear, or are you just a simple guy? Like,
I would say I'm more of a simple guy, but I'm definitely like, I'm kind of diving in deep to the black hole of gear that never ends. But I think with my home studio, I have a great key setup that I can kind of run any kind of keys thing through. So I've got a M-Audio controller, but I've also got like my Nord that I use live set up right now in there. And then I've got like I love like the Keyscape plugin. All those pianos are amazing. A lot of the Spitfire pianos, like, and I think most of them are free, which is crazy because they're like so insane. So look up the Spitfire stuff if you haven't, but they've got some great pianos on there. And then I usually run Pro Tools, cause I love editing in Pro Tools, but Logic is also fun sometimes too, it has some creative elements to it that Pro Tools kind of doesn't. And, so I work in there sometimes. And then I've just got a really good vocal chain. Like that's the thing that I invested money into, really, just to really make sure I could do like kind of acoustics and bass and vocals all through this kind of one chain. So I've got a Soyuz mic, the 017, which is a great mic, kind of fashioned after a vintage U67. And then I've got it running into a 1084 plugin, or a 1084 mic pre, and an LA2A compressor. And so that's kind of like my vocal chain, which also works great for bass, great for acoustic. You know, I kind of use it for all of those. So
those are outboard or are you using plugins?
That's all outboard, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the 1084 and the LA2A are outboard gear. That's the only outboard stuff that I have. So I think, I would love to have like a little side studio, side of the house kind of thing at some point, mainly because I love like getting a band together. My favorite way to just create, even just record and write songs even, is like, give me a full band in a room, all on like great mics, great pre's, great ears, like, and let's just see what happens. Like, I would love to have a space like that at some point, you know, and we can even rehearse for tours that way and stuff like that. Like, I love that. But for now, I can track anything but drums if I absolutely needed to track it at home. You know, just through those few little pieces of gear, I can track that stuff. So, and I have a Apollo Twin too for just the A to D conversion, and you know, I'll use that for if I'm tracking just a demo. I'll use the SM7 mic, $300 mic. That's amazing, into my Apollo Twin, and just use some of the UAD plugins on there, and it's awesome.
That's cool. What'd you say the mic was called?
It's Soyuz. So the company is Soyuz. You can look them up. It's a pretty new company. It's like 4 or 5 years old. And when I was looking for a vocal mic around about 4 years ago, I went to this store in town that has a ton of great microphones and did a shootout. And they threw up about 10 different microphones up. And we kind of started narrowing them down. And we narrowed it down to between this mic and a Wonder U47. So it's a vintage U47 remake. Those are the two mics that I was kind of like in between, and ended up going with this Soyuz because I had Carrie come sing on it. And I was like, the chances of us finding a mic that can work for both of us are very slim. Our voices are so different, but let's just see. And so I had her come sing on both of those mics. and she really loved. Oops, sorry, I had a call come in. My bad. And she really loved the Soyuz, and so we went with that one. And it's crazy. We've used it on both of our records since 2017. So her Garden record and both of my my first record and this one. And then we're going actually when I leave here, we're going to go track her vocal on another song today. We're going to take it with us. So it's an amazing, seems to be kind of like all around good mic. I've tracked upright piano with it. I've tracked acoustic with it. And it's a great, if you have the money to invest in it, it's a great investment because it just works on literally everything. And anybody that we've had sing on it sounds amazing in it, which is pretty rare to find. So
that's cool. What, was it at Vintage King you did the shootout?
Yeah, Vintage King.
Did you like plan that with them and shut the store down, or were people shopping and you guys were in there mic testing?
I planned it in the sense that we kind of booked the mic room, so people were shopping all over the store, but yeah, I booked it with them. We kind of booked the mic room, which is just the room where they can throw up. They have all these little mic stands they can throw up mics on. Yeah. So I guess they do it pretty often, but yeah, we were in there for a couple of hours, just pulling stuff and trying stuff, and yeah.
That would have been funny not funny, but cool to walk in and just see the two of you guys testing out mics,
Yeah,
that's cool. What about do you have your room treated, or do you have a separate space, or you just throwing it up in the living room?
I really, I should have it treated. I've got this guy's phone number that I've had for 2 years. I need to call to treat it, but no, I mean, I've got it kind of in a little bonus room in our house, and it's carpeted and it's kind of A-framed, so I had to kind of move my desk around to figure out how to get it to where it sounded the most natural. But I mean, I feel like for me, I've tracked vocals in it. The room I'm in right now is super echoey. I don't know if it sounds like that on the recording. So I wouldn't be able to do it in here. But that room, because it's carpeted, it's pretty dry. I know exactly kind of where to put the mic to make it reflections or whatever. So, I've definitely seen the benefit of having that, but also the pressure of it doesn't really, it's okay if it's not, because I'm not mixing anything. So if I was mixing something, I would definitely want it treated. But I've got two, Yamaha HS8s, simple speakers. You can get a Guitar Center in there, but I mainly just work in my headphones, so I rarely have the speakers on in there anyway. So it ends up being great for it.
It's crazy. Sorry, Ryan, I can keep going because once I get started talking on gear, it's crazy to see the way I mean, before you'd have to book studio time, and things have changed so much now, that you could have a simple signal chain, a little bit of outboard gear, and that you're saying you're using that on almost everything,
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. I loved, for nothing else, you listen to that song, that entire song was made in tour green rooms. We made it over the course of 3 weeks, and it was me and our keys player McKendry and my drummer Austin. So we all three of us co-produced a song together, and that was literally made in one green room to the next, just setting up laptops. So I didn't have any outboard gear on that. I used all internal UAD plugins to, even that vocal was tracked in a green room. I had my Soyuz with me on the road, but I tracked that entire vocal on UAD, kind of mimicked what I have here. I had a 1073 and LA2A or 1176, I think. I don't remember, but yeah, I have a video of I filmed, I did my Nothing Else vocal here, film the whole thing, and it's just insane what you can literally do in the box now. And if I have the ability to go into a studio and do I feel the only thing we use a studio now for, honestly, is drums. You have to have a great studio for drums. But really, man, we don't really spend a whole lot of time in studios. We kind of just spend time at each other's houses, and even file sharing now. I mean, we're working on a studio version of a song right now for Carrie, and because this quarantine, we literally me and the producer were sharing a session. So there's a plugin called, I'll get real deep into this gear thing if you want me to.
Yeah.
There's there's a plugin called Listen To. It's by a company called Audio Movers. So you can go to audiomovers.com. Their Listen To plugin is amazing. Like you put it into your stereo bus on your session, and you can stream, like, so you can send a link to that person and they can either listen on like Safari. So we do this with mixed revisions a lot now. Like when we're making a record, like most people, like the main guy that mixes our stuff is over in Wales. So like he'll like stream a mix. If we're like in mix 3 and we're still trying to figure out notes and we can't really get it figured out over just email chain, he'll just stream. You log on Safari and he can play his stereo bus live for you, and you can be texting notes. Okay, right there. So this plugin allows you to do it. So the other day, because of the quarantine, me and the producer working on the song, and I was playing piano on it. And so we had each other's Listen To streams like going in our sessions. And so I could hear his session in full quality in my studio, and he could hear mine. And so literally we were able just to, like, he was producing my keys part on this song while I was playing it, and we were able to just hear it. And it's amazing what you can do just kind of in the box now.
So how real time is that?
There's like a half-second delay. So, I mean, you obviously don't want to track over it, but he threw me the audio file to track to, so I pulled it in my session. And then at that point, he's listening to it in sync on his session. It's just a half-second off, so it's not really that big of a deal when you're just kind of producing and giving notes across it, you know?
Okay. Do you have to be in the same DAW?
No, he was in Ableton and I was in Logic.
Wow.
So that Listen To plugin just allows you to it's literally just sending a stereo feed of whatever you're sending out of your stereo bus. So you could work in different DAWs and just print the files as audio files instead of sharing the session, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's cool. One thing,
yeah, you put the capacitor on the second 1/8.
Well, it's funny because some people, like, we were talking to Mac Brock a little while ago, and I was trying to kind of see what I just assumed he'd be a super gearhead, and he was like, I don't really care, whatever, I'm not sure. And then it's funny when you find some people don't care at all, and the other people like are super into it, and so it's interesting when you find, especially the way things are right now with being able to build stuff at home. Like, it's really...
I mean, right now, so the producer who's producing this is a drummer, so he tracked drums before all this kind of hit. So we've got drums, but then literally, like, he's sending the session to the guitar player. He's tracking guitar. Send the session to the bass player. He's tracking bass, all at their houses. I tracked piano over that. We're tracking vocals, like Carrie and I are tracking vocals over it just at the house. And then, once the quarantine lifts, we'll get some of like the gang vocal choir kind of elements we want to do. But other than that, I mean, as far as individual players, like, you're able just to send it around, and that's really the way that we do it. If we can get in the studio and the budget's there, we love that environment, but it's definitely not necessary if you can't.
Yeah. How did changing the subject, the Blessing, that song?
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, you did that with Elevation, right?
Yeah. So we were at Elevation a few weeks ago. We're going in just to lead worship on the weekend with them, and we just tacked on a writing day on the front of it. And so we were writing on that Thursday, and we sat down to write. We wrote a whole different song first, and we had been writing for about 8 hours into their song, and then we were sitting down to demo that song, and this other idea, while we were like getting ready to demo, this other idea just kind of started happening in the room. And so we stopped and sat with that for a second. And this idea started floating about just writing around the number 6 blessing, just the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. And so we're like, oh, it's a cool idea. And we were all pretty tired. We were writing since 10. It was 6 o'clock or so. And we're like, do we write another song? Like, do we keep going? Like, this feels kind of special. Let's write, figure this out. And man, the song just like dropped in the room. It was crazy. We wrote it in about 3 hours. And it was like, as soon as we knew that number 6, we found a translation that we loved, and like the melody just fell out like first time. And then we instantly were like, oh, we should sing amens in the chorus. It was just like all these light bulb moments of like things going off. And Carrie started singing the bridge, just may his favor be upon you, 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children. And so it felt like this thing that we just really took these scriptures and these promises and just kind of framed them up a little bit and put melodies to them. And it's crazy. It's like the first song I've ever been a part of writing that I honestly didn't feel like I wrote. There was just, I don't know, man. It's just special that wasn't really a whole lot of crafting to it, which a lot of songs are that way. And it's great. Run to the Father was a massive craft. But I love that it was, because we really dialed in every like lyric and melody and made sure we wanted it. It was the way we wanted it. And I'm so proud of it. Like a kind of like a art piece you display, but this one just kind of happened. And so we finished the song, and because Carrie and I were leading worship that weekend already, we were all just kind of like, this is a little unconventional to introduce a song this fast after writing it, but let's just do it. We're here. We don't know when we're going to be here again. So let's just do it, And that just kind of did this whole snowball effect of like, we led the song, the church responded like crazy. People that were streaming live, like, were texting in, and there's just like this massive wave of response to the song, to the point that we like started talking about, I feel like we need to release this like as soon as possible. Just started feeling this like impression from God to just put it out now. It didn't make any sense because I was releasing an album the next week. Elevation had just announced that they were releasing an album on April 3rd that this song wasn't on. So we were all kind of like, this doesn't make any sense from a marketing standpoint, but we almost felt like at this point, we feel like God's like, marketing doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Like, this song needs to be right now. And so we just like hurry up and got it done, pushed it through. And so we wrote it on Thursday, led it on Sunday, and then it was out on YouTube on the following Friday. And man, like that was before we really knew, that was before the quarantine. That was before all the stuff we really knew was going to get locked down. And to really see the timing of this song, it just feels like the perfect song at the perfect time. It's like mind-blowing to us. And now we see why we felt like God was like, you have to release this right now, So that's been a fun thing to just be a part of, man. Like Carrie and I just stumbled into that. I didn't expect to come out of that weekend with something like that. And we're just thankful that for whatever reason, like God chose to just drop it in that room that day. And it's been amazing to watch it encourage people. And it's encouraging our family. Like, that's why I say it almost feels like we weren't even a part of writing it, because we're grabbing onto it as if somebody like gave it to us. Like, thank you for giving us this song. We're declaring it over our family and over our kids, clinging to it. And like, kind of like, it's helping us just keep fear at bay outside of our house, just declaring the blessing of God. So I love that song, and I'm so thankful that it's out in the world.
Yeah, because the thing I was wondering was how, like, at what point in this whole Corona process was that song being written, and did you have any of that in your head at the time? Like was it even on your radar?
No, I mean, we were writing just thinking about the blessings of God in Scripture in general, just the promises of God. It was written on it was like February 25th, I think, is when it was written. So, national emergency wasn't declared till March 13th. And so, yeah, it was weeks. Corona was like, at that time, I remember the conversation, it was happening in China and it was happening in other countries, starting to kind of happen in other countries. And it definitely wasn't a threat here yet. It was just kind of a conversation of what happens if it comes to the States or whatever. So it definitely wasn't written out of that. And that's what was so mind-blowing to us, is when we felt this impression all of a sudden, like, you have to release this now. There wasn't even any talk at the time. Even when we were leading worship that weekend, there wasn't any talk at the time of church getting shut down. Like, no one even had that in their mind, So it was just crazy when we released it. And then pretty much the day we released it on YouTube is when the conversations kind of started becoming like, oh, this might be a problem here. And then a week after that, it was like, oh, this is a national emergency. And then the week that it got released on all the audio, which is last week, 27th, was the week that it was like, whole country shut down. Everyone stay inside. And that's the day it came out on all the platforms. I don't know, man. It's just been crazy to see that timing of that happen that way.
Well, we appreciate it. I'd love to have you on again, because once you started talking about marching band, Under Oath, and then gear, like I'm like,
that
man,
really lit up the whole conversation.
it perked me up, man. Like, I mean, I've just been kind of moping around my house today, listening to the news and stuff, and then like I don't know why that gave me a little energy today.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, but can I close with one final question?
Yeah.
What's the weirdest part about being quarantined right now?
The weirdest part, I mean, I don't know. The weirdest thing is that I just can't like go see my friends or like that feels so strange. Like I'm like, if I go see my friends, like it's just gonna be two of us. That's fine, right? Like that should be like, you know, I don't know. It's really interesting to like. It's really interesting to like feel like you have to stay home, even though I love being home, and even though I would probably choose to stay home anyway. But just this feeling of like I can't go somewhere, like that's just really kind of a weird thing. But man, we're just trying to lean into it and just trying to really make the most of it. I feel like if I don't really like value it now, when it's all over, like in I'm sure a few weeks or whatever, and you know later in the year, I'll probably look back on this and be like, man, I really should have enjoyed that more, because I'm sure when it's all over, it's going to be like guns blazing for everybody, and we're going to be so busy and touring and all this kind of stuff. So I'm trying to just enjoy it. Like I'm trying to enjoy not having to really like change out of my sweats and just stay home and you know create music with my kids screaming in the background. Like that's awesome. So
yeah.
All right, well, thanks, Cody. We appreciate you being with us. I'm excited to get this out because
sweet.
It has a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Good, man. Thank you guys for making a great interview. It was awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate it, man.
All right.